Okie dokie. Hi everyone. To those people that tuned in, hope you had a fantastic evening until now. And if you're still healthy, I hope you stay healthy and we can wait this out. Now, before we start with all the Bitcoin and Ethereum stuff, I've got some kind of breaking news, and I think it affects especially Americans. And if you haven't, so Trump eyes a back-to-back work plan despite the coronavirus. So I'm living in Switzerland and we've had it kind of bad, not as bad as Italy and Spain and other countries, but I think most countries and most leaders are pretty in sync in terms of social distancing, remaining at home, and so on. However, Trump brings us breaking news, and he wants to send workers back to work despite having the threat of the coronavirus. So I think this is kind of disturbing. I don't know about you, but yeah, I think this is really bad news, especially since the infection rate of the virus is pretty high, and if everyone goes back to work, then they probably see similar situation as what Italy and Spain have been seeing over the last few months. And I think the worst case, even though there's been a lot of talk about herd immunity, I think the biggest problem is the healthcare system, and the most countries, counties in different parts of the world, the biggest problem is the intensive care units. There's not enough of those. So even though the idea of herd immunity is okay, I think it won't work, and I'm not really sure why Trump is deciding this. So let's dive into the article and look at what is actually happening in his little pea brain, because that's yeah, I think that's something that is quite curious. All right, so President Trump, egged on by a number of advisors and business leaders, believes the economy will greater absent a strong signal and wants to stagger the reopening of work nationwide. People who've spoken to him tell. So behind the scenes, Trump has been hearing from lots of people in the business community and conservative media telling him the economy can't survive this shutdown much longer. Yeah, so they're realizing they're on a sinking raft and they don't really have anything, like they don't have any lifeboats. We're going to talk about what kind of lifeboats they're going to try and use, talking about quantitative easing and stopping people from going on the bank run, but it's looking very dire. And I think they're just starting to realize that, especially the management, the Trump management is starting to realize that the economy, they don't really have that many aces up their sleeve that they can start pulling. And yeah, it's kind of sad that he's moving in the direction of trying to make sure that the economy goes well, but not really looking after his people. And yeah, so the sources say that horrific, truly scary economic consequences is what Trump is describing, and probably also leading to these actions. So he says, we have to get this going. And probably in his accent, we have to get this going. Trump said during a dinner time briefing lasted 2 hours. The faster we get this going, the more likely it is that those stores, little businesses, big businesses, medium-sized businesses open up. But I mean, that's just like, I don't know. I mean, I realize that he's been saying a lot of BS the whole time that he was in presidency, but I think he blew a little bit the lid on this one. So I will get the economy going very fast, very fast. As soon as we say, let's go, and it's going to be pretty soon. It's going to be sooner than people would think. I'm trying to imagine how he's actually voicing these things. And even though it sounds pretty funny, mimicking him, it's actually a very scary scenario and situation. And I hope the different states in the US are going to handle this a lot better than the president is doing it. And I hope he can pull through with this. So what's next? Luckily, nothing has been decided yet, but Trump has been persuaded, in line with his instincts, that the economy can't sustain this shutdown for much longer. So the following points, 3 points: the administration is discussing different tiers to ease Americans back into normal life after the 15-day period that ends next Monday. People with underlying health issues on the highest risk age range will likely be asked to stick with isolation, but others will be encouraged to get back into a more normal routine. And between the lines, remember that Trump has no public health professionals in his circle of informal advisors. And the reality check, this is really, I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to wrap your brain around how someone like this thinks. I mean, I'm not American, and we always joke around how a president can react so lackadaisically based on the health of his people, of the people that he's trying to lead. And like the situation that we've got here is that the COVID ID, since it spreads so fast, it's not such a danger if you've got it. But the problem is the more people are infected, the higher the percentage is of people that get infected that need intensive care. And there's a limited amount of intensive care. It's costly. And like if you've seen some videos on the internet, if you haven't, check out the videos. There's a few from Italy where they film some intensive care units, and you've got like beds everywhere, like in the hallways, and the people also need to have this respiration thingy. I'm not sure what it's called, and that's limited. So the problem is, if he follows through with this this thing he's trying to do, get people back to work in 2 weeks. I mean, like 2 weeks, it's mind-blowing. Hi, William. Happy to have you on the stream. Thanks for watching. So, yeah. All right, finished about Trump. I really hope he can't pull this through, because if he does, a lot of people are going to die. I mean, even though we tend to make fun of him and he really pulls some very crazy, he says some very crazy things on Twitter, and he just like is a bit of a comedic figure for us in Europe. His actions have consequences, and unfortunately the consequences are going to be the people that have the least amount of money, the least amount of power, and the vulnerable of percentage of the population. All right, let's jump over to some Bitcoin stuff. Let's go to some more interesting Bitcoin cryptocurrency stuff. Now, many people have been talking about correlation. They're a bit disappointed because Bitcoin cryptocurrency market is not completely correlated with... no, actually, it's other way around. They're complaining that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is correlated with the stock market. In my opinion, I think it's much too early to tell. If we look at maybe 2 or 3 years, or even 10 years of data based on Bitcoin, then it's definitely not correlated. And I think you can't just take 1 week of data now because the stock market dipped a bit and Bitcoin dips as well. It doesn't really mean that it's correlated, maybe just for that small time span, but it doesn't really matter for a long-term perspective. And also doesn't change my opinion of Bitcoin as a safe haven. So let's dive into Bitcoin being a port, like a safe haven, a place of security for many small and retail investors like you and me, because we're looking for an outlet, a place where we can put our money that is away from all the governments and the quantitative easing and stuff like that. We're going to dive into that afterwards. So we've had a bit of a storm, we've had a bit of a dip, but what's the outlook from now? Do we have any light at the end of the tunnel? Let's see. So in the article, after the market storms of the past couple of weeks, we could all use some relatively good news. And this storm brings destruction, but it also brings clarity. So Bitcoin is bouncing, but who knows what wild swings will have gone through by this time this is published. So Bitcoin's price is not where to look for clarity now. It's more existential than that. Very beautifully said. I might be in a small percentage of the investors, but I don't really care at the moment what the price is. I mean, if you think of a long-term perspective, we've been talking a lot about the different market cycles, that Bitcoin should reach maybe $100,000 by latest 2024 and and maybe $1 million earliest 2028. Now, if you look at these price numbers, it doesn't really matter if BTC is at $6,000 or $3,000 or $9,000. You'll probably be making a lot of return on investment. So me, in my opinion, I'm just accumulating, dollar cost averaging, so that I have a nice low average price, entry price. So I think the important part that we have to look at is the value that Bitcoin can bring to you. And the first point I think it's very important is the loose monetary policy. I'm a very big advocate against the current monetary policy, and with the central banks around the world hitting the markets with whatever they can, money supply constraints have been thrown out of the window. And as this crisis unfolds, the amount of money that will enter the system to help out not only markets but also citizens and companies will dwarf what we saw in 2008. So it's just the beginning. If you remember the 2008 financial crisis, then something beautifully emerged on that. And I've also got a proof of that just in a bit. And that beautiful thing that emerges, Bitcoin, because the Satoshi Nakamoto, he envisioned a type of money that cannot be manipulated, changed, 100,000 units per day, created more and more, like the US dollar is being created, printed daily through the mismanagement of the Federal Reserve Bank. So back then the markets were threatening to drive the economy into a wall, so reassuring them was paramount. Now the threat to the economy is driving markets into the wall with the usual tactics that, as soon as market panics, aren't going to simulate demand that is reeling from mandatory shutdown. So printing money could perhaps help if it actually gets in the hands of the consumers, but that will create inflationary pressure in an economy with no tools left to fight it. Now, I think I read a good article a while ago, and it's a very good explanation to show that it doesn't really matter how much money printing is going to happen in the next month or next 3 months. It doesn't really matter, because the thing is, at the moment we've got a black swan event, and no matter how much money is getting put into the market, it will not stop this black swan event from continuing. So it doesn't really matter how much money gets put into the market. It will not bring planes back into the air that are grounded due to COVID-19. It will not start companies getting much more money because people are not going and buying stuff. The consumer aspect of many populations, many countries, the consumerism has gone down dramatically. So it doesn't really matter how much money is been printed, people are not consuming anything. Of course, you could maybe argue that companies are getting the money, but in my opinion, that just causes a worse bubble than we've got, because many large companies, especially just big large companies, tend to use the bailouts to buy back their stocks, and when the market is booming, they use their yearly revenues to buy back the stocks and increase the stock value until they don't have any reserves. There's a market crash and they get a bailout again. And who pays the bailout? Well, the retail, just the normal people, you and me. We pay it with our taxes. So a second good argument for Bitcoin is the currency markets, and investors around the world are fleeing into dollars, pushing up its value relative to other currencies, and this could help the US consumer by making imports cheaper if imports weren't distributed by supply chain constrictions. But with a strong dollar, US manufacturing will become uncompetitive, and foreign holders of dollar-denominated debt would get pushed into default. Other countries' import and debt service costs will skyrocket, weakening their currencies and pushing up the dollar even further. And this ballooning demand for dollar could lead to a currency liquidity crunch and the swap lines extended to a foreign central bank. And yeah, that's probably one reason why I think there's going to be a shift, not only from at the moment the US dollar is the reserve currency. So it's possible that after this crash, I know that's a bit far-fetched, but it's possible that after this, after COVID-19 and after the recession, because I believe this COVID-19 is going to bring a recession, even though on one hand, I know it has to happen, a recession has to happen, but it's not going to be a beautiful thing. It's going to be a bloody recession. Many people are going to lose their jobs. People are going to die because they can't afford healthcare. So it's not a beautiful thing that happens, even though it has to happen. And after the recession, you're going to have probably another reserve currency, and I don't think it's going to be the US dollar. It could be the Chinese yuan, but I'm not sure. The funny thing is, due to the COVID-19, they haven't suffered as much in the stock market. And that's probably because many countries are dependent on China for the export, the products are exported from China. So company supply chains are more affected than China itself. Yeah. Let's continue. And this is what I wanted to talk about, the beautiful thing that emerged from the last recession, and that's Bitcoin. And it's actually printed into the first Bitcoin block, and the Genesis block has been mentioned quite a few times. If not, an image below should be self-explanatory. And as you've got the hex symbols here on the left side, and you've got some text. And if we zoom in a bit, you've got the Times, 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And as you can see, there's a very large coincidence with what happened around 10 years ago, when Bitcoin came to life. So I don't think anyone should be scared about the future of Bitcoin, since I'm sure you've seen the Dark Knight movie, where here you've got the Bane, he's got this mask on, he says, I was born in darkness. No, you don't know what darkness is. I was born in darkness. I'm sure I botched the line completely. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that Bitcoin was born from the ashes of the last recession, and thus is going to, without any doubt, going to withstand any recession thrown at Bitcoin, because you cannot just do any quantitative easing on Bitcoin. Bitcoin, one BTC is always going to be one BTC. Many people always compare with the US dollar, but the US dollar is losing value. So why would you compare one BTC with US dollar? It's better that you realize one BTC is always going to be one BTC. And it doesn't really matter if people consider Bitcoin as a store of value, competing with gold and real estate, a medium of exchange for uncensored transactions, or a potential unit of account due to its non-inflationary model. And as the digital currency supporters say, Honey Badger doesn't care, and they're in that sense right. Most likely there will never be a consensus on what Bitcoin's main usage is, and some would argue that there's no need for one. And I think that's a very good point to make. Many people are debating, oh yeah, but Bitcoin, in the white paper there was they said Bitcoin is digital cash, but the transactions are too slow and so on. I think the transactions are fast enough for what it is used for. And on another aspect, the people that use BTC, the people that see it as a store of value, they mold it into what it is. So it got molded into a store of value instead of peer-to-peer digital cash, because what people need at the moment is not a peer-to-peer digital cash, but more of a store of value. They want to have an asset that they can put the money in that keeps a value and isn't subject to really bad monetary policies from governments. I mean, the government can just say, let's stop trading. Let's stop this exchange or that exchange. Let's put that country out of business because we stop any kind of trading. But yeah, have fun. You can't do that with Bitcoin. So yeah, Bitcoin was designed to work on a standalone basis without the need of banks, governments, international currencies, or whatever system is needed for traditional fiat money. And satellite and mesh network communication systems are currently in use in order to keep the Bitcoin blockchain alive, even during an internet outage. All right. Now, yeah, of course, people are going to be arguing, yeah, but how is Bitcoin a store of value even if it lost 45% in the last week? But I made a video a while ago about what is going to happen to different cryptocurrencies during a financial crisis. And at the beginning, people are going to be scared. People don't want their money in volatile assets, in risky assets, and it is true, BTC is at the moment still not it doesn't have the maturity as gold. Gold has a few hundred years, even more, of maturity, and people trust it and so on, but it took some time. I mean, I'm sure if you look back, I'm not really sure how long gold has been traded. I'll be pulling some numbers out of thin air, just guessing, but let's say 10,000 years ago, someone had to convince someone else, hey, look, this gold is worth something, give me your chicken for that. And there's a funny video on the internet where there's a vendor, and he's selling some meat, and there's another guy who says, hey, look, take my new form of money. And he plunks a bit of gold on the table and he says, look, this is gold. And then the vendor just doesn't want anything to do with this new type of money, because people are, they don't like the change. People are resistant to change. So they don't really like having new things. And Bitcoin is very young. I mean, it's just 10 years old. I mean, most people that can influence or can invest large sums of money are probably double our age, triple our age. And they probably still haven't really figured out the internet that is already 30 years old. Let's see. Yeah, so yeah, thanks Marius for your comment. Good point. Good point. One $1 is, even though $1 is always $1, but if you look at $1 30 years ago, 100 years ago, it's quite sad how much value it lost, especially if for minimum wage workers the inflation rate doesn't match the amount that minimum wage workers have been paid over the last 50 years. Even though the amount might have increased, it didn't increase as much as the inflation rate. All right, so let's talk about the resilience and lack of correlation. And so the Bitcoin price sustaining a level above 5,000. I think now it's around 6,500, which is pretty good. It's probably going to have another dip, probably around the 5K range, maybe even lower. Let's see. Let's see, 50 days until the halving. Anything can happen, really anything. And so the S&P only took 3 weeks to drop 20% from its peak, a point which most investors consider the beginning of a bear market. And this is unprecedented in history, even compared to the 1929 stock market crash. I think this is going to be a long downtrend. I mean, the 2008 market crash, I think that took at least a year to even reach the bottom. So that would mean that we would reach the bottom more or less March next year. More or less. Maybe January next year. Yeah, the Bitcoin halving, even though a lot of people were bullish, I think a lot of people are now a little bit less bullish just because of the Black Swan event. But that's what the Black Swan event is. It's just unforgiving. It will pull everything down. The good thing is that hopefully some things will pull less down than others, and it will weed out the bad projects, the bad companies, the companies that are rotten from the inside. So the equivalent of inflation being reduced to 1.8% per year after the block subsidy cut does not directly translate into price appreciation. So what investors should be looking for is sustainability of the network despite the halving's negative impact on every single miner, because they're going to hit half the amount of BTC. They're going to get like 3.5, something like that, BTC per mine block. Yeah, so that's not going to be good, and they're going to have to cover their electricity costs. And many miners are going to go out of business, going to sell all their hardware because they just can't keep up with the mining because electricity is too high and they get too little BTC for that. Well, I don't really want to talk about Bcash, BSV. To be honest, that's not worth my breath. I'm not interested in those projects at all. And yeah, those joke projects I'm not going to talk about. Will Bitcoin survive the current financial crisis? My opinion is, of course, just because, like I mentioned before, Bitcoin is born from a recession, born from the ashes of the last recession, and it's not going to be a problem. It might lose a lot of value, but it won't disappear. It's possible that we see new lows. That's not something I can argue against. All right, let's continue. Yeah, I remember this article. I thought it was pretty cool. I'd share it. If you're enjoying the stream until now, then I'd really appreciate if you hit that like button. It'll help me out. And if you've got any questions, you want me to cover something, then leave it in the comments and I'll gladly answer your questions and give my input to them. So economic downturn eases trillions from stock market and shows just how tiny crypto truly is. Yeah, the crypto market is very small. I'm not mistaken, if you take the top 100 companies, like based on their market cap, and the crypto market cap would be maybe around the 24th or 25th company. Probably now it would be like around number 30 because of the amount of value that it lost over the last few weeks. So it's probably around company number 30 or something. And yeah, so it's no secret that 2020 has been a rough year for the world, kicking off with raging fires in Australia. I already forgot about the fires. Yeah, it's been pretty bad. You got like fires, and now we've got a pandemic. I wonder what's next. What's coming next? Hopefully nothing. And so this economic downturn has been unprecedented, with the US stock market's benchmark indices all seeing declines emblematic of those incurred in a major recession. So we have to look at that. Let's see if we've got coronavirus destroys the global economy and creates far-reaching shockwaves. And yeah, I think this is interesting. The recent stock market sell-off shines a light on just how tiny the crypto market truly is. And Michael van den Bopp, a popular analyst, explained that Apple's market cap has already declined by over $400 billion from its year-to-year date highs, which is over double the size of the entire crypto market's capitalization. Apple is massive. Crypto is small, but that also shows how big the growth of crypto can be in the next 10 years. I mean, it's going to be exponential. As soon as this whole thing has blown over, the dust has settled. Now the Dow Jones index is down 38% in 1 month. Just 1 month, Apple lost 34% and about $400 to $500 billion in value. In just 1 month, crypto market capitalization has $180 billion, and we're just so tiny and early, but digital cash and crypto are the future. This just shows how small the market is, and if Bitcoin and other digital assets are able to capture even a fraction of the size of the traditional markets, I mean, if you just take the S&P 500, that's just massive. I mean, it's like 30, what is it, like $30 trillion? Or probably even more. I'm not sure if I've got that number correct. Don't take my word on it. I'll have to fact check that afterwards. All right. Why pay taxes if they can just print money? I watched this video and it was just really, really good. There's two guys sitting in the room, and one guy, he's an economist, another guy is just like this normal retail investor. And yeah, the normal guy just asked the economist, yo, what are we gonna do about financial crisis? It's looking pretty bad. And the economist looks at him and says, we've got the solution. It's really good. It's the best solution ever. And the normal guy just like asks, oh, what is that solution? And the economist says, well, it works like this. We've got this big building, top floor. We put a table next to the window. We put a printer on the table, open the window, and plug the printer in, put some paper into the printer, and take a $100 note, put it on the printer, hit on copy, unlimited amount, and print it out of the window. So the money just goes out the window. That's how we solve this problem. And it's no joke. And the normal guy like, yeah, but that's what's up with all that fake money? I mean, it's not real money. It's like fake money, just printing it. You know, there's nothing backing it. And yeah, and then the economist just says like, oh, and he takes his phone, phones up the Federal Reserve Bank, says, I think he saw through our ploy. I don't think he thinks he's as stupid as we thought he would be. And I mean, it's seriously, I mean, that's what's happening at the moment. And if we go, I think it's this one. No, it's not this one. Yeah. And the Federal Reserve Bank, infinite amount of cash is the biggest argument for Bitcoin yet. And the United States Federal Reserve has suggested it could print unlimited money. Just press on print. Take a $100 bill, put it on the printer, press on print, just let it run. Here's what that means for the economy. And the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, Neil Kashkari, said that the Federal Reserve has an infinite amount of cash in response to worries over the market collapse. I mean, just think of that. I mean, how can you just like pretend that your currency is worth anything after saying, no worries, I can just press on print, no worries. It's like in Age of Empires. I'm sure you played the game Age of Empires, and I think it's in Age of Empires 2. I'd play it. Sometimes I'd play without cheats, but other times I'd play with some cheats. I can't really remember the names of the cheats, but you could just like type in different things and you get like unlimited gold, or you could like, I don't think it was unlimited gold, but you could print like 100,000 gold each time you put in the cheat. So that's what the American Federal Reserve Bank is doing. They're just like playing Age of Empires, and they're just like typing, okay, let's go, put some gold, and then printing 100,000 over and over again, unlimited amount of times. And they're printing everything that they need. With gold, they can buy the wood for the houses, and yeah, and you know that feeling that you get when you played the Age of Empires game and you just like felt, oh, I don't really feel like the gold doesn't really have any value anymore because you just can have so much of it. Yeah. But I mean, I understand on they've got to do something, but I feel like it's just taking the piss of the population like this. It's just ridiculous. It's like the Monopoly game. I'm sure you've seen or you played Monopoly. The next time you play Monopoly, you can look at the rulebook, and the rulebook says the bank never runs out of money. And if the bank would theoretically run out of money, it doesn't run out of money. You just take sheets of paper and you write the amount on the piece of paper and you give it to the players. So the bank never runs out of money. And it's funny that that Monopoly, a game that's existed already so many years, has that in the rulebook, and yeah, it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old. It's an interesting time to be alive. Very interesting. So, and those in the Bitcoin industry think this is fascinating, of course, because Bitcoin always has 21 million. It doesn't have any money printing, Bitcoin printing going on. Of course, you got the forks, but they're worthless. They're all worthless. Bitcoiners have always known that fiat detached from some kind of peg. Like gold always ends up with the abuse of money printing, and governments can't help themselves. And the current crisis just brought front and center that money printing is one of the few tools they have left. The trillions of US dollars that will be printed will be unprecedented in history. Alan Silber, managing director, and he adds this Alan Silber, managing director at INX, adds, I think once the dust settles of liquidations, margin calls, and outright panic, Bitcoin will start to show its strength against unlimited fiat printing. Matti Greenspan, founder of Quantum Economics, agreed this is basically the reason Bitcoin was created. He said one of the Bitcoin's main objectives is to counter the notion that money creation can be inexhaustible. And yeah, it's hard coded. Like we've already looked at that. It's hard coded in the Bitcoin's Genesis block, the first Bitcoin block, where we looked at the bank bailouts. We already looked at that. And here's the document with the here's the rule from the monopoly with the tweet leaked Fed document as a joke. So yeah, if you want to read that, you can read it. Some players think the bank is bankrupt. If it runs out of money, the bank never goes bankrupt. To continue playing, use slips of paper to keep track of each player's banking transactions until the bank has enough money to operate again. The banker may also issue new money on slips of ordinary paper. Yeah, that's what's happening. The government, most national banks are playing Monopoly with you and I, and the people to pay the price. You get a prize if you can guess that. It's basically you and I with our taxes. Yeah, let's continue. Let's see what we've got else. So there was one news that was going around with the digital dollar stripped from latest US coronavirus relief bill. Yeah, there was a mention about the digital dollar coming. And yeah, it's been stripped away, so the first news was not correct. And the House of Democrats' latest version of the Take Responsibility for Workers, Families and Acts revealed late Monday does not contain any language around the digital dollar in its section or direct stimulus payments. So that's fake news that was going around, or some misunderstanding. Yeah, there was an idea that came about in the news last week about a digital payment system organized by the Federal Reserve and its member banks directly to send these funds to US residents with expenses during COVID-19. And residents should receive $1,500 per person, though individuals with an income greater than $75,000 and couples with an income greater than $150,000 would have to repay the funds. Yeah. Bitcoin halving, 49 days, 18 hours, 7 minutes. Looking forward to that. Probably do a live stream then. You can tune in. Alright. US banks have to have 0% reserve requirements due to coronavirus. That means reserve, they have to have reserve to print to like give out loans. They have to have a certain amount in liquid, but now due to the pandemic this reserve has been removed, and that means fractional reserve banking has no reins on it at the moment. And banks worldwide take strict measures amidst the pandemic. The entire global financial system is changing to adapt to worldwide quarantine. This makes banks and other financial institutions take drastic actions aimed at halting the COVID-19 outbreak. And for instance, China and Hungary have tried to quarantine cash as it could become a potential source of contamination. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I've been a avid card mobile phone payer myself for the last few years. I really despise using cash to pay, and I think that's a good point, because cash can transmit a lot of diseases. So it's good that it's good that cash is being pulled, and maybe something else is going to take its place. Alright, so there's not enough dollars, and Bitcoin could do better than that. The problem with the global market lies in an inadequate supply of the USD. The natural thing to do was to print more dollars and to supply it to the market, but experts say such options could worsen the situation by causing unbearable levels of inflation. The problem with the quantitative easing is not now. It might work short term. The companies will have their money, will be able to pay the bills, but long term, the problem with printing money is this debt doesn't go unpaid. It flows into the inflation. So the inflation hit that the US dollar is going to get is going to be really bad. It's going to be bad. If they don't put some brakes on this money printing, the inflation is going to be terrible. And talking about bank runs, I think you can make your own opinion on this, but the FDIC government is suggesting that you keep your money in an account that is FDIC insured, where it's safe and sound. And they also say that it's safer to keep your money in a bank, that you don't have cash in your mattress, that you don't take cash out of your account. So basically they're trying to instill a bit of security in the people, that they keep their money in accounts, so that the banks can use it for other things. Because if people are going to start taking the money out of their accounts, a bank run's going to happen, and not everyone is going to be able to take the money out of their accounts. There are many countries there where bank runs have happened, and they never end good for all the people, because there's not enough cash to go around. People believe they've got money, but in actual fact they don't have any money. They just have, basically, the bank has a loan towards most people for a sum of money that you've got in your account, but it's not actual money that you've got. It's basically a loan that the bank is telling you, oh, we'll pay this back to you, until everyone starts pulling the money from the banks. Then you'd prefer that you be like in another place. Yeah, like the answer here that Xmongo X says, what happens if everyone takes their money out at the same time? And they've got a fun answer with the fire dog, who's normally in a firehouse, but now he's surrounded by COVID-ID bacteria, not bacteria, viruses, and he's hoarding piles of toilet paper. Toilet paper meme has definitely caught on. There's been a lot of those around. Alright. So, how stimulus bills envision digital dollar? Where we saw this, that this is actually old news. And let's close this. I want to maybe go a little bit away from the crypto. Let's talk a little bit about the Deutsche Bank. Strategist warn of hyperinflation generated by anti-coronavirus policies. So a bit what I've been talking about now, just another article talking about the hyperinflation. And I think Germany is pretty well informed concerning topics of hyperinflation. They had a few cases of hyperinflation in the last 100 years. I think the first one was after the First World War, and then there was a second one of the Second World War. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they understand how hyperinflation works. They're probably the experts by now. And governments around the world are responding to the economic crisis created by the coronavirus pandemic by printing billions in the new money, which will result in fiat inflation. According to a report published by Zero Hedge, two Deutsche Bank strategists are warning against the use of helicopter money. Basically a helicopter flying around. You can imagine a helicopter flying over a town and people dumping bags of money onto the houses and streets. And yeah, that's basically the metaphor for the central banks rushing to print new money and provide economic relief. Strategists Oliver Harvey and Robin Winkler published a report claiming that the injection of helicopter money could make the current economic crisis a lot worse. And the report starts with, the economic policy response to the coronavirus looks very similar to the last financial crisis. Central banks have responded with liquidity for the private sector through swap lines with banks and purchases of commercial paper from corporates and have lowered the cost of money through the interest rate cuts and quantitative easing. Yeah, the author argues the 2008 crisis was caused by a lack of confidence in the banking sector, while the most recent economic collapse is being generated by government policies. The decision to close borders and limit access to business has created a supply shock. In addition to widespread, if temporary, unemployment. Strategists argue if the government tries to keep spending at levels before lockdowns began, while at the same time keeping lockdowns in place, there will be simply more money chasing after significantly fewer goods and services. The result of this will be inflation, and a lot of it. So I think we've got the gist of it. If they continue a lot of inflation, you're going to have to get a wheelbarrow to buy a loaf of bread from the grocery store soon. And that's not a joke. Yeah, so already covered that. Last but not least, we've got, I think that's a very interesting topic. Not many people have been talking about it. I haven't seen many other YouTubers talk about it. And it's a strain on the internet since everyone is now working from home. And the more countries that are affected, the more people are working from home. And that will affect the internet connections of whole countries, because the internet providers are not used to having so much data going through their cables that will clog the systems, and people will not be able to work effectively. And big companies are already reacting to that: Netflix, Google, Apple, Amazon. Yeah, with around 1 billion people staying at home, remote working, or just watching shows online, these big streaming services have already downgraded the quality of their streams. They probably want to downgrade the quality of this channel because my internet and computer is not so good that I could be streaming 4K or even full HD. So I won't be affected, no worries. Coronavirus hurt European internet infrastructure, and I think we've already covered that. So they're just slashing the quality. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I hope they will manage to pull through, because should the internet go down, then a big catastrophe is gonna happen. Then we can't do anything at all anymore. So yeah, maybe let's quickly check the crypto market as a last thing, and then I'll bring this stream slowly to an end. Yeah, so we've got a bit of a nice green day today. We have to savor that, since at the moment there's more red days than green days. Bitcoin's at a lovely $6,700 US, and Ethereum also $138, pretty nice. Probably going to be something like a double top, and then we're going to see some new lows. Let's see if we get a lower low than the previous low, or we get a double bottom. Both will be very interesting. And yeah, I think most cryptos are more or less correlated, give or take a few. I might make some videos about which coins I'm following, but I really don't like talking about this is the best 5 coins to choose, because I mean seriously, no one really knows, and in my opinion, most people that talk about these top 5 coins you should take, or this is going to be the best 3 coins, altcoins for the next bull market, they're probably paid to say that, or they've got these coins in their portfolio and they just want their own coins to perform well. And I'm not going to name any YouTubers, but if you look at the performance of most of the popular YouTubers and the coins that they promote, I would say like 99% of the coins that they promoted have done terribly. I mean, like really bad. Worse than if you just kept Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the top 5. Yeah. I think that was it for today. That was it for this evening. And I'm sure I'm going to do another stream like this. If you didn't manage to get it, you'll probably be able to watch the replay. And yeah, I'm going to catch you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye bye.